The howling wind slapped against the wooden walls of the stage-coach station like an angry beast trying to claw its way inside. But Sophia Newell barely noticed as she stared out the frosted window at the endless white landscape. 3 months she'd been waiting in this godforsaken outpost at the edge of Wyoming territory, and not a single word from the man who had promised to make her his wife. It was December 1876. And winter had descended upon the frontier with merciless intensity. Sophia had arrived when the hills were still touched with the golden hues of autumn. Now they were buried beneath 4 feet of snow, and her hopes had frozen along with the landscape. "More coffee, Miss Newell?" Mrs. Thornton, the station keeper's wife, approached with a steaming pot. "Thank you." Sophia extended her cup, grateful for the woman's kindness. The Thorntons had taken her in when it became clear her intended groom wasn't coming. "Any word from Echo Canyon?" Mrs. Thornton's expression softened with pity. "No, dear. The pass has been blocked for weeks now. No mails getting through until the thaw." Sophia nodded, swallowing her disappointment. She'd replied to Nathan Quinn's advertisement in the Eastern newspaper with such hope, a cattle rancher seeking a bride, promising a good home and respectful treatment. His letters had been thoughtful, even poetic at times. They'd exchanged correspondence for 6 months before she'd spent nearly every penny she had on the journey west. "I should never have come," she whispered, more to herself than to Mrs. Thornton. "Don't say that," the older woman replied. "You're young, only 22. Life has many paths ahead. But which path?" Sophia had burned her bridges back in Boston after her father's death left her penniless and at the mercy of relatives who viewed her as little more than a servant. The West had promised a fresh start, a home of her own, perhaps even love in time. "Mr. Thornton says if there's no word by spring, he can arrange passage to Denver," Mrs. Thornton continued. "You could find proper work there." Proper work. They both knew what that meant: a schoolteacher if she was lucky, a laundress, or worse if she wasn't. The thought made her stomach clench. "I appreciate that." Sophia forced a smile, unwilling to burden the kind woman with her fears. The door to the station burst open, bringing with it a swirl of snow and the bulky figure of Mr. Thornton. "Storm's getting worse," he announced, stamping his boots. "Might be the worst blizzard in 10 years. Sophia turned her attention back to the window. Out here, a storm could mean life or death. She'd learned that much in her 3 months at the outpost. The isolation of the frontier was both terrifying and strangely liberating after the suffocating confines of Boston society. Later that evening, as the wind howled with renewed fury, Sophia sat by the fire mending one of Mrs. Thornton's aprons. The station was quiet, the few travelers who'd been passing through having settled in for the night in the sparse rooms upstairs. "You have a fine hand with a needle," Mrs. Thornton observed, rocking in her chair. "My mother taught me," Sophia replied. "She always said a woman should be able to create beauty even in difficult circumstances." Mr. Thornton looked up from his newspaper. "Your mother sounds like a wise woman." She was. Sophia felt the familiar ache of loss. Her mother had died when she was 16, leaving her alone with a father who had gambled away their modest fortune before drinking himself to death. The sudden pounding on the station door made them all jump. Who in tarnation would be out in this? Mr. Thornton muttered, reaching for the shotgun he kept behind the counter. "Could be someone in trouble, Walter," his wife cautioned. Mr. Thornton nodded and approached the door cautiously. "Who's there?" he called. "Nathan Quinn," came the muffled reply. "From Echo Canyon." The name hit Sophia like a physical blow. She stood, the mending falling from her lap to the floor. Mr. Thornton threw open the door, and a man stumbled in, snow covering his heavy sheepskin coat and hat. He was tall, his face obscured by a snow-crusted beard and the woolen scarf wrapped around his lower face. "Shut that door before we all freeze," Mrs. Thornton exclaimed. As Mr. Thornton secured the door against the howling storm, the newcomer pulled down his scarf and removed his hat. Ice crystals clung to his dark blonde hair and beard. His face was weathered, but his eyes, a startling blue, were clear and alert despite the ordeal of traveling in such conditions. Those eyes found Sophia immediately. "Miss Newell." His voice was deep, roughened by the cold. Sophia could only nod, her own voice momentarily abandoning her. Nathan Quinn's face broke into a relieved smile that transformed his features. "Thank God. I was afraid you might have given up and gone back east." Given up? After he'd left her waiting for months without a word? Indignation flared, overriding her shock. "Mr. Quinn," she managed, her voice cooler than she'd intended. "What a surprise to see you. After 3 months, I had indeed nearly given up." His smile faltered. 3 months? But He looked confused. Then understanding dawned. "You never received my letters." "Letters?" Sophia echoed. Mr. Thornton cleared his throat. "The mail hasn't been getting through from Echo Canyon since October. Trail's been impassable." Nathan shrugged off his heavy coat, revealing broad shoulders and a lean frame. "I wrote every week," he said, his eyes never leaving Sophia's face. "When I didn't hear back, I feared the worst. Then when the first blizzard hit..." He ran a hand through his damp hair. "I should have come sooner." "You shouldn't have come at all in this weather," Mrs. Thornton interjected. "It's a miracle you made it. How'd you get through the pass?" "Didn't take the pass," Nathan replied. "Came the long way around through Rattlesnake Valley." Mr. Thornton whistled low. "That's 3 days hard riding in good weather." "Took me 5. Nathan's gaze returned to Sophia. "I couldn't wait any longer, not knowing if you were safe." Something in his voice, a raw sincerity, made Sophia's anger begin to melt. Still, 3 months of uncertainty and fear weren't easily dismissed. "You risked your life," she said softly. "I gave you my word," he replied simply. "I promised to make you my wife, to give you a home. I don't break my promises, Miss Newell." Mrs. Thornton, ever sensitive to the undercurrents in the room, touched her husband's arm. "Walter, help Mr. Quinn with his horse. There's a space in the stable. I'll heat up some stew." Once the men had gone back out into the storm, Mrs. Thornton turned to Sophia. "Well, it seems your cowboy hasn't forgotten you after all." "He's not my cowboy," Sophia protested, though her cheeks warmed. "And I barely know him." "He rode through a blizzard to find you," the older woman pointed out. "That tells you something important about his character." When the men returned, Nathan's horse and gear secured in the stable, Mrs. Thornton served up bowls of venison stew and hot coffee. Nathan ate like a man starved, which he likely was after his journey. "The ranch is about 30 miles southeast of Echo Canyon," he explained between bites. "Good land, plenty of water. The house isn't grand, but it's solid. 2 bedrooms, a proper kitchen. I built on a washroom last summer." Sophia listened, trying to picture the place that might become her home. "How large is your herd?" she asked, remembering his letters had mentioned cattle ranching. "Nearly 200 head now. Started with just 40 when I claimed the land 5 years ago." Pride was evident in his voice. "Lost some in the spring floods, but we had a good calving season. I've got 2 men who work for me year-round. Decent fellas. And neighbors." "Nearest is the Wilkins family, about 3 miles east. They have a daughter about your age, Sarah. Good people." He set down his spoon. "Echo Canyon's growing. We've got a general store, smithy, even a church now, though the preacher only comes through once a month." It sounded remote, but not the complete wilderness Sophia had feared during her long wait. Still, she had questions, important ones, before she could decide whether to proceed with their arrangement. "Mr. Quinn, Nathan, please. Nathan, she amended. Your letters spoke of a partnership. Is that still what you're offering? He met her gaze steadily. Yes, I need a wife, not a servant. Someone to help build something lasting. He hesitated. I know it's not what you might have had in Boston. Boston held nothing for me, she interrupted. I wouldn't have answered your advertisement otherwise. Later, with the Thorntons retired and the other travelers long asleep, Sophia and Nathan sat by the dying fire. The storm continued to rage outside, but inside the station, a different kind of tension had developed, one made of cautious hope and unspoken questions. Tell me why you really came, Sophia said finally. The truth. Nathan studied her face in the firelight. I've been alone a long time. When your letters stopped coming, I realized how much I'd come to look forward to them. To your thoughts, your way of seeing things. He looked down at his hands. I began to fear I'd lost something precious before I'd even truly found it. His honesty disarmed her. I was afraid too, she admitted, that you'd changed your mind, or worse, that something had happened to you. I'm sorry for that fear, he said quietly. If I'd known. You couldn't have known. Sophia surprised herself by reaching across to touch his hand briefly. And here you are now. Here I am. His voice had dropped lower, and something in his gaze made her heart beat faster. The storm won't break for days, she said, changing the subject to safer ground. Mr. Thornton says it could be a week. Then we have time, Nathan replied, to talk, to decide if we still want the same things. And what is it you want, Mr. Quinn? His eyes never left hers. A partner, a friend, someone to share the good days and help weather the bad ones. He paused. And perhaps, in time, love. The word hung between them, both promise and question. I want those things too, Sophia said softly. I didn't come west for adventure or fortune. I came seeking a place to belong. Then perhaps we can find that together. Over the next 5 days, as the blizzard continued its assault on the small outpost, Sophia and Nathan carved out moments to learn about each other beyond what their letters had revealed. They shared meals with the other stranded travelers, played cards in the evenings, and talked during the quiet afternoon hours when the Thorntons were busy with their duties. She learned he'd come west after the war, where he'd served with the Union cavalry. He'd lost his family, young parents to fever, a younger brother to the war, and had been drawn to the open spaces of Wyoming where a man could build something of his own. The first winter nearly broke me, he admitted as they sat by the window watching the endless snowfall. Wasn't prepared for the isolation, the cold. Lost half my cattle and nearly froze to death when my cabin roof collapsed under the snow. What kept you going? Sophia asked. Stubbornness, mostly. His smile revealed a dimple in his right cheek. And I'd given my word to my brother before he died. Said I'd build something worth leaving behind. In turn, Sophia shared more about her life in Boston, her father's decline, the humiliation of poverty after a lifetime of modest comfort, the disdain of relatives who had taken her in but made it clear she was a burden. My cousin Harriet suggested I become a companion to her elderly aunt, she told Nathan. The woman was known for going through companions like handkerchiefs. No one lasted more than a month in her employ. What did you tell your cousin? Sophia smiled at the memory. I said I'd rather take my chances with a stranger out west than be trapped with a known tyrant in Boston. Nathan laughed, the sound warming her more than the fire. Brave words. Perhaps foolish ones, she countered. I knew nothing about you except what you wrote in your letters. And now, his eyes held hers. Now I know you're a man who keeps his promises, even at risk to himself, she said honestly. That matters more than fine words. On the morning of the 6th day, they awoke to silence. The howling wind that had been their constant companion had finally ceased. Sophia found Nathan at the station door, staring out at a transformed world. The snow lay in massive drifts, some nearly reaching the eaves of the stable. The sky above was a clear, piercing blue. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Nathan said as she came to stand beside him. "Yes." She wrapped her shawl tighter around her shoulders. "What happens now?" He turned to face her. "That depends on you, Sophia. My offer stands. I'd be honored to make you my wife, to build a life together at Echo Canyon." He took a breath. "But I understand if you need more time, or if you've changed your mind entirely. I could arrange passage to Denver in the spring, as the Thorntons suggested." The sincerity in his voice, the respect implied in giving her a genuine choice, these were worth more than flowery declarations. Sophia had seen enough of life to value substance over sentiment. "I haven't changed my mind," she said firmly. "I came west to be your wife, Nathan Quinn. That hasn't changed." The relief and joy that transformed his face made her breath catch. Without warning, he took her hand and brought it to his lips in a gesture that seemed to come from another time. "You won't regret it," he promised. "I'll spend every day making sure of that." 2 days later, when the main trail had been partially cleared, Nathan prepared to return to Echo Canyon. The plan was for him to arrange for a proper wagon and supplies, then return for Sophia within the week. "I could take you now," he offered as he saddled his horse. "It would be a hard ride, but—" "And arrive at my new home half frozen and exhausted?" Sophia shook her head. "I've waited this long. A few more days won't matter." He smiled down at her. Practical as well as beautiful. The compliment brought color to her cheeks. During their days together, something had shifted between them. What had begun as cautious respect had softened into genuine affection and, at least on her part, the stirrings of deeper feelings. "Be careful," she said, suddenly anxious about his journey back. "Always am." He hesitated, then bent down from his saddle and brushed his lips against her cheek. "1 week," he promised. "I'll be back with a proper wagon and supplies." Sophia watched him ride away until he was swallowed by the vast whiteness, her fingers touching the spot where his lips had pressed against her skin. True to his word, Nathan returned in exactly 7 days with a sturdy wagon, extra blankets, warm clothing, and even a small but elegant silver ring that had belonged to his mother. "I know we haven't stood before a preacher yet," he said as he slipped it onto her finger. "But I want you to have this now as a promise." The Thorntons and the few remaining travelers gathered to see them off, offering good wishes and practical advice. "Mind you wrap those feet good," Mrs. Thornton instructed, handing Sophia a stone-hot water bottle. "Nothing worse than chilblains when you're starting a new life." The journey to Echo Canyon took 2 full days, with an overnight stop at a trapper's cabin where Nathan had arranged lodging. Sophia spent most of the journey wrapped in blankets in the wagon bed, watching the winter landscape pass by and listening to Nathan point out landmarks and share stories of the territory. "That ridge there," he gestured to a rocky outcropping in the distance, "is where I tracked my first elk. Nearly starved that first winter until I got better at hunting." "You were alone?" Sophia asked, trying to imagine the solitude. "Mostly. Had a partner early on, but he moved to California after a year." Nathan glanced back at her. "It's different now. The territory's filling up. Echo Canyon had just 3 families when I first settled. Now there's nearly 30 households in the valley." When they crested the final hill on the afternoon of the second day, Sophia got her first glimpse of Echo Canyon. The valley stretched below them, the snow-covered landscape broken by scattered homesteads and the small cluster of buildings that made up the town. Smoke rose from chimneys, signs of life amid the winter stillness. "There," Nathan pointed to the southeast. "That's our place. Can't see the house from here, but see that line of cottonwoods along the creek?" Our land runs from there to that far ridge. Our land. Our place. The words sent a thrill through her that had nothing to do with the cold. The ranch itself came into view as they descended into the valley, a sturdy log house larger than she'd imagined, with a covered porch and smoke curling from the stone chimney. Several outbuildings stood nearby, and a corral held a few horses that raised their heads at their approach. "Home," Nathan said simply as he pulled the wagon to a stop in the yard. Before Sophia could respond, the front door opened and a wiry man in his 50s emerged, followed by a younger man. "About time you got back," the older man called. "Was starting to wonder if you'd frozen somewhere along the trail." "Takes more than a little snow to stop me, Samuel," Nathan replied with a grin. He turned to Sophia. "My foreman, Samuel Davis, and his son, Tom. They've been keeping things running while I was gone." "Miss Newell," Samuel tipped his hat. "Welcome to the Quinn Ranch. We've got the house all ready for you." Sophia was touched by this thoughtfulness. "Thank you, Mr. Davis. Just Samuel, madam. We don't stand on ceremony much out here." Nathan helped her down from the wagon, his hands strong and steady at her waist. "I'll show you around," he said, a hint of nervousness in his voice that endeared him to her all the more. He clearly wanted her to be pleased with what would become her home. The house was simple but well built, with a large main room that served as both kitchen and living area, dominated by a massive stone fireplace currently blazing with a welcoming fire. A wooden table with 6 chairs stood in the kitchen area, and comfortable-looking furniture was arranged near the hearth. "The bedrooms are through here," Nathan said, leading her down a short hallway. He corrected with a touch of color in his cheeks. "Is the larger one. The other I use for storage mostly, but it could be." He trailed off, and Sophia understood he was thinking of children. "It's a fine house," she said sincerely. "Much larger than I expected." Relief washed over his face. "I've been adding to it each year. The washroom is the newest part." He showed her the small addition with its copper tub and pump that brought water directly into the house, a luxury Sophia hadn't expected on the frontier. "Samuel's wife, Martha, will be by tomorrow," Nathan explained as they returned to the main room. "She's been helping with the household when I need it, but she's eager to meet you." "That's kind, but I'm perfectly capable of managing a household," Sophia assured him. "Never doubted it," he replied. "But she's a good woman, knows everyone in the valley. Thought you might appreciate a friendly face while you're settling in." His consideration touched her deeply. Everything about the ranch showed thoughtful preparation, from the well-stocked pantry to the neatly kept rooms. This was a man who had truly been preparing for a wife, for a shared life. That evening, after Samuel and Tom had gone to their own cabin on the property, Sophia and Nathan shared their first meal alone together in what would be their home. Nathan had proven surprisingly adept in the kitchen, preparing a simple but hearty stew. "Where did you learn to cook?" she asked as they sat at the table. "Army taught me the basics. Rest I figured out from necessity." He smiled wryly. "A man can only eat beans and bacon so many times before he gets desperate enough to try something new." "Well, I'm impressed, but please don't feel you need to continue. I'm quite looking forward to taking over the kitchen." "Might be nice to share the duties," he suggested. "I've gotten used to cooking when the mood strikes me." This simple acknowledgement that their marriage could involve shared responsibilities rather than rigid divisions reinforced Sophia's growing certainty that she had made the right choice in coming west. After supper, they sat before the fire, the comfortable silence occasionally broken by Nathan's explanations about the ranch or Sophia's questions about the community. "When can we be married?" she asked finally, the question that had been on her mind throughout the evening. Nathan looked pleased by her directness. "Preacher Thompson comes through on the first Sunday of each month. That's 10 days from now." He hesitated. "If that's agreeable to you?" Very agreeable, she confirmed. Though I'm not sure what people will think of me staying here before the wedding. Martha Davis has offered to have you stay with them if you'd prefer, Nathan said. But out here, people understand practicalities. No one would think less of you for staying in your own home, especially with winter making travel difficult. He leaned forward. But I want you to be comfortable, Sophia. I can sleep in the bunkhouse until the wedding if that would make things easier. His consideration moved her. That won't be necessary. I trust you, Nathan. The words hung between them, weighted with meaning beyond the immediate circumstance. Trust was the foundation. They were building, a rare and precious thing between two people who were, in many ways, still strangers. The 10 days before their wedding passed in a whirlwind of activity. Martha Davis proved to be a blessing, introducing Sophia to the other women in the valley and helping her learn the rhythms of ranch life. Several neighbors stopped by with welcome gifts, preserves, quilts, practical household items that showed the community's support. Nathan gave her space to settle in but was always nearby, ready to explain or assist when needed. In the evenings, they continued their conversations by the fire, their knowledge of each other deepening with each passing day. What do you miss most about the East? He asked her one night as snow fell softly outside. Sophia considered the question. Music, perhaps. My mother played the piano, and we often had music in the house. She smiled at the memory. And libraries. I love to read. The next day, Nathan disappeared into town and returned with a small crate of books, history, poetry, novels he'd purchased from the general store owner who had been saving them for the schoolteacher they hoped to hire in the spring. Not quite a library, he said somewhat shyly, but a start. Sophia was deeply touched by the gesture. Thank you, she said, running her fingers over the embossed cover of a volume of Tennyson's poetry. This means more than I can say. As the wedding day approached, Sophia found herself thinking less about the ceremony itself and more about the life that would follow. There was an ease between them now, a companionable understanding that felt like the beginning of something enduring. I never expected this, she confessed the night before the wedding as they sat by the fire. When I answered your advertisement, I hoped for respect, for partnership. I didn't dare hope for. She hesitated. For what? Nathan prompted gently. For someone who would see me, truly see me, she finished. Not just as a wife or a helpmate, but as Sophia. Nathan reached for her hand, his calloused fingers warm against her skin. I see you, he said simply, and each day, I find something new to admire. The kiss that followed was their first tentative at first, then deepening with a hunger that surprised them both. When they finally pulled apart, Sophia saw in Nathan's eyes a reflection of her own feelings: wonder, desire, and the dawning realization that what had begun as a practical arrangement had transformed into something far more profound. I think I'm falling in love with you, Sophia Newell, Nathan whispered, his forehead resting against hers. I think I may already be in love with you, Nathan Quinn, she replied, the words both frightening and freeing in their honesty. Their wedding day dawned clear and cold, the winter sun casting a crystalline light over the snow-covered valley. The entire community gathered in the small church, filling the pews to witness the union of Nathan Quinn and the Eastern bride who had braved winter's fury to join him. Preacher Thompson, a weathered man with kind eyes and a resonant voice, spoke of commitment, of building a life together on the foundation of respect and love. When the time came to exchange vows, Sophia's voice was steady, her heart certain. I, Sophia, take you, Nathan, to be my husband. The traditional words took on new meaning as she spoke them, a promise not just of fidelity but of partnership in all things. Nathan's hands held hers firmly as he repeated his own vows, his blue eyes never leaving her face. When he slipped the simple gold band alongside her mother's silver ring, Sophia felt the completion of a journey that had begun months ago with a hopeful letter sent east. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," Preacher Thompson declared. "What God has joined together, let no man put asunder." The celebration that followed at the ranch was boisterous and warm, with neighbors bringing food and music, the small house filled with laughter and good wishes. As evening approached and the last guests departed, Sophia found herself standing on the porch with her husband, watching the winter stars emerge above their land. "Happy, Mrs. Quinn?" Nathan asked, his arm around her waist. "Very happy, Mr. Quinn," she replied, leaning into his embrace. "Though I must admit, I'm still surprised by how everything unfolded. If that blizzard hadn't come when it did, I would have found you anyway," he said with certainty. "Some things are meant to be, storm or no storm." Looking up at his face in the starlight, Sophia knew he was right. What had begun as a practical solution to loneliness had become something neither of them had dared to hope for, a love born of respect, kindled by courage, and strengthened by the shared vision of a future built together. As the years passed, that vision became reality. The ranch prospered under their joint stewardship, with Sophia bringing her own ideas and energy to their enterprise. The small bedroom that had once been used for storage eventually welcomed 3 children, 2 daughters, and a son who grew strong in the clean mountain air and learned early the value of hard work and family bonds. Echo Canyon itself grew from a scattered settlement to a proper town with a school where Sophia sometimes taught when the regular teacher needed assistance. Nathan served on the town council, his steady judgment respected by newcomers and old-timers alike. On winter nights, when blizzards raged outside their sturdy home, they would often tell their children the story of how their father had ridden through the worst storm in memory to claim the bride who thought she'd been forgotten. "I was never more scared than when I thought I'd lost you before I'd even found you," Nathan would admit, his hand finding Sophia's across the table. "And I was never more surprised than when you walked through that door, covered in snow and determined as anything," she would reply, the memory still vivid after all the years. It was a story of courage and commitment, of promises kept against impossible odds. But more than that, it was their story, the beginning of a love that had flourished in the harsh beauty of the Wyoming frontier, proving that even in the wildest places, the human heart could find its home.